Okay. All right. Liz, good to see your profile pic. Maybe video soon.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, Dallin, for sure.
Are Will Severns and Bill Severns actually different people, or are they both you doing different meeting things?
Oh, man. Gosh, that's a great question, man. I think that is, well, it's bone of his bone, flesh of flesh. Bill is my father, so we've got him on.
Okay, that makes plenty of sense. That works.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, guys, it'll be kind of Hollywood Square vibes as people hop in. Oh, there you are, Liz. Good to see you. As Liz, y'all, launched her book this week. So excited for her. Yeah, so pumped. I have to be careful. You know, we could turn this into an hour with Liz and talking about how amazing she is and how excited we are about her book. But yeah, as people file in here, we will go ahead and get started. Good things come to those who are on time or at least within a minute of the call starting. So yeah, guys, Alex and I are so pumped for this call with Marissa Eigenbrood. She is a new friend to the Streamline family. As of a couple months ago, we got connected with Marissa through LinkedIn. And pretty quickly, we just thought, oh my gosh, Marissa is brilliant and someone we are already grateful to have in our corner as a conversation partner, as a potential referral connection point for different authors of ours, and just an amazing thought leader. So she's the president of Smith Publicity, and I will let her have the floor here in a couple minutes to talk about herself, her expertise, and different ways that she's going to, I know, be a huge benefit for everyone here on the call. But like I said, good things come to those who are on time. We have the first that we're going to do on one of these Streamline group coaching calls, and that is a giveaway, y'all. So yes, these squares here, you guys get to participate. And you might notice I'm rocking it backwards. We have a Streamline, we got some Streamline swag. And we're giving away a free Streamline hat. In the next minute or two, we've got merch, more merch to come. You can tell one is slightly more faded than the other. But even with the fade, you know, it's kind of a cool blue. It shows, hey, we've got a lot of wear here. So we're going to mail, or if it's a Kansas City recipient, I will drive this over to your mailbox. Because the question that is going to lead to the winner happens to be Kansas City themed. Omaha, sure. Chad, I might. We'll make a day of it. We'll bring the kids. We'll do the zoo. I'll give you your hat. You all might have noticed Kansas City in the news quite a bit this week. Some of you're tired of it. You don't want to hear about it, but we're going to get one more question in because Kansas City Chiefs had a special guest. Taylor Swift sat in a suite. Yes, Liz, we don't need to revisit game one, but the Lions did take game one, and maybe there's a Super Bowl rematch. So yes, Chad, it was Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift went on a date after the game. The whole world knows about it. The question for a Streamline hat is this. First person to drop in the chat the name of the restaurant where not just T Swift and Kelce went, but they kind of rented out, had a good amount of people come join them on a rooftop. If you can tell me the name of the restaurant where they went in Kansas City, you've got a Streamline hat. First person to show it in the chat, go ahead, Google away, or if you know it, not McDonald's, Severns Burger Joint would have been a more private, romantic in our backyard. Anyone? Prime Social, Dallin, let's go. Oh, Liz, you're so close. Google's not cheating. We're all on Google. We're all doing it. So Dallin, congratulations. Let's see some claps, virtual claps. You have a Streamline lid coming to your way. And yeah, we actually have a few more of these hats. If you're interested and you're a friend or fan, reach out to me. If you, my dad raised his hand for a Streamline hat. Pops, we just got to get your microphone working. But you found the hand. So yeah, everyone, thank you guys so much again for joining the call. Dallin, pumped to get you the Streamline swag. Alex, you got anything on that? Any T-Swift analysis before we hand it over to Marissa?
I would, but Bill's raising his hand. I think he wants to say something. So Bill, at any point, just feel free to cut me off and interject. But no, that was a great giveaway. And Liz, if I would, I don't have your book yet. I haven't received it in the mail, but I will be soon. Maybe we could have done a giveaway of your book that you published like last week. So more giveaways to come in that regard. But yeah, guys, today we want to stay on schedule and we want to honor your time. But I feel like there's a lot of value that will come from today's call. And, in the past we've done, we kind of mix it up where some calls will be, we have an author speaker who are maybe they're talking most of the time. Today, Marissa has a lot of industry experience when it comes to PR, marketing, branding. And, Will and I, as we've, ran the Streamline play the last 2 years, in many ways, we get asked like the same questions over and over again. It's like author, there's probably 50 different questions that just keep getting asked of like, hey, when I publish my book, what do I do? Or how do I get on the Joe Rogan podcast? Or not everyone asks that one, but you know what I'm saying? Like people ask like, how do I get my book out there, right? What are the top things that I should be doing when I have a book? And how do I allow it, for impact, for obviously making income through your business or your speaking or your offering, but just like wanting to be successful in your launch. And I know a lot of our messaging and things we talk about is like, how do you reframe that to what makes the most sense for you? And I was literally last night having a conversation with my wife about this of just like, this month was crazy for me. And it's like, I don't want every month to look like this from a speaking standpoint. And it's like, and so it's like just thinking about that for your own life and your business, I think is so important. And so, yeah, Marissa, I will hand it off to you just to maybe introduce yourself. And guys, we just want to, as Marissa's speaking today, we really want to open up the floor, almost like I view this almost like as a office hours with Marissa type deal where it's, we're getting, everyone's getting this free content that she's providing for us. And we wouldn't have brought her on this call if we hadn't seen the expertise that she's already helped us with. She's doing with other authors. And so, yeah, with that said, Marissa, tell us about you. We're so honored that you're here and thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys so much for having me. And I think it's a beautiful segue into me saying first that Smith Publicity, where I work, is based in Southern New Jersey, very close to Philadelphia. So I don't necessarily have anything to give away right here, but if anyone can tell me the other Kelsey brother who plays for the Eagles, then maybe I'll find something to send to you. But so yeah, we're right across the bridge. There we go, Jason. And if you haven't watched the Kelsey documentary yet, I highly recommend it. It's great. It was very painful to watch that Super Bowl replay once again from last year. So, but football aside here, I am with Smith Publicity, as Alex and Will shared. We are a book publicity and marketing agency. We've been around for 26 years. This year, I have been at Smith for pretty much my entire career, about 15 years. Started about a year after I graduated from college, and didn't even know that book publicity was a thing that I could get into. PR was always of interest, but I happened to stumble upon this kind of niche PR agency in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and the rest is history. I cannot imagine a life without books in it for myself, and without this amazing team that we have here. So our primary work here and our passion really at Smith is, we like to say, you write the book, we help tell your story. There is such beautiful opportunity with every single book. It doesn't matter what your genre is, to reach a wide variety of audiences, to really establish, your voice, whether it's, a leadership book or a self-help book or a personal development book, whatever it is. There's such, amazing opportunity out there. There is such a call and a drive for more content from thought leaders in so many different ways. And through our work, we really help individuals identify how are you going to reach your audiences through the right channels, and then how are we going to amplify your voice through traditional media. And I love that Zoom and Meetup are so common today, because I use my air quotes there on traditional. The media landscape has changed so dramatically year over year since I've been here at Smith, and it's always evolving and growing in new and exciting ways, and allowing for even more channels to open up for individuals to share their stories, their ideas, their passions, their thought leadership, and again, that's what brings us joy in the work that we get to do every day. So that's a little bit of the broad strokes of Smith Publicity and what we do. We primarily work with individuals, around a launch, and that is there's a lot of flexibility to the word around. It can be pre-launch, it can be post-launch sometimes too, and that pre-launch window can vary quite a bit. So it's all a very tailored and customized process, and really identifying with an author, what are your goals, who are you trying to reach, and very much what feels right for you, and how do we build out a plan and guidance that's going to best support you through that.
Yeah, wonderful, Marissa. Thank you so much. For that cursory glance of your career, your expertise. Obviously, guys, hopefully everyone on this call knows now why we thought Marissa would be awesome to have here. And, any questions, feel free to connect with her on LinkedIn in the aftermath of this. So if you drop a question in the chat, we don't get it to today. Marissa's in our corner, and she's an awesome friend. So Marissa, I would say this, and then after you answer this, maybe if you all have questions, we can release one or two if you off mute to ask, or if you drop it in the chat. But Marissa, kind of how we've discussed in the past, just the delineation between, traditionally published authors versus an author who might go with a hybrid publisher such as Streamline. We know for the sake of this call, it's a tough barrier to entry, on the traditional publishing side as it relates to having a big blown out platform, even though it's understandable why traditional publishers might want to work alongside someone who has that ingrained platform. So maybe if you could speak to kind of the difference of the two, but then also just your experience alongside hybrid publishers, authors that go with a hybrid publisher, and how they can kind of keep that flame burning before, during, and definitely after book launch, because kind of a saying we'll use with some of our authors is kind of like gasoline on a fire, right? Like your book launch, a lot of times that flame's going to go up pretty high. No matter who you are, that flame will go down pretty quick. And we tell our authors, don't get discouraged when and if that happens. Stay encouraged as it relates to kind of the kindling you can form for the next 3, 5, 10 years of your authorship journey, And so would be curious your thoughts on that matter, kind of playing the long game, especially in this hybrid publishing space.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I'd love to speak to the hybrid and traditional piece there first before we jump into the longevity of a book launch. But I think that we work with authors from all different publishing paths, all different genres, all different walks of life. And I think what's most important is in identifying what the right path is for you is really making sure there's alignment of what the different publishing path is going to be able to offer you. And also, I think really importantly is the control that you get to have over your messaging and your intellectual property and such. And while I would say when I started here 15 years ago, hybrid was a newer thing. It was just starting to emerge and kind of percolate out there a little bit. And traditional publishing was the end all be all for everybody. And it was everybody aspired to reach that pinnacle in their author career. And it's not the case anymore, to be honest. What I see in terms of the service and the hand-holding and the guidance as provided from hybrid publishing, and again, the team at Streamline, others that we get to work with, it's in full transparency, it's much more elevated than the traditional publishing experiences in many instances today. I see a lot of authors who might get the chance to go traditional on a first or second project and actually switch course over to hybrid after, because they see that they're able to have such a closer connection and collaboration and partnership with their publisher when they go the hybrid route. So again, we love working with authors from any different path there, but I think that when you're going the hybrid route, you get to have such a voice and such an impact on what you want your final product to look like. Everything from your cover to the formatting to what's inside the book, making sure it really speaks truthfully to you. And if you're seeing your book as a marketing tool in any way, a business card for other bigger brand and business goals you might have for yourself. So if you see it as you want this book to be a key piece to your speaking career, to coaching or consulting you're doing, then you need to make sure there's really close alignment between what's in your book, how it's looking, and then what you're sharing through your platform. Otherwise, your thought leadership. And I was actually just talking to an author of ours who she launched a book last year. She has another traditionally published book coming out in the fall of this year, and her first book was self-published, and you would never know it. It is beautifully done, and she is really questioning whether her third book is coming out at the end of next year. She wants to go traditional again or not, and is really considering the hybrid route. And I think it's such a perfect fit for her because of that control that she would get to have over her project. And so I think, again, are there sometimes extra bells and whistles you might get here or there with a traditional publisher where they have certain streams for distribution or other things? But in the end, I'll ask all of you on this call, when's the last time you walked into a physical bookstore and bought a book, versus on Amazon or on bookshop.org, supporting the independent bookstore? That's where most book sales are coming from, is online today. So that, extra of distribution that can come from traditional publishing sometimes, and their paths not always as important as I think it was years ago. I think too, what I see a lot more with hybrid versus traditional is just that, very quick, just desire and excitement to bring other people in to support you, to share referrals, share relationships, share others to fill out your launch puzzle. So that, I think a lot of hybrids work, but they know that they're not going to be able to cover all the bases, and you need to fill in those other puzzle pieces. And they're quick to offer up those relationships versus, I think, traditional sometimes will try to hold on to that, that power of marketing and publicity sometimes when maybe they're a little stretched thin internally and aren't able to support as much. So, and then sometimes the recommendation to bring in outside help comes a little bit later than we might always want to see before a launch, if possible. So again, both offer great opportunities. But if you're an author who is really looking at your book as a marketing tool, as a key component of a larger brand and a larger thought leadership platform that you're building, I just see a lot of great benefits to the hybrid model and supporting that.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the other question too, but I want to see if there's any follow-up to that first.
Yeah, I had a quick question. So Marissa, if let's say you're only going to, because we have some people on the call who have already published, who are currently writing, who some people have never done their first book. So when you think about, okay, this is maybe hard to answer this, but if you're stranded on an island
Mm-hmm.
and you could only do one or two things to market your book and in what you're trying to do, are you able to simplify it down to that for everyone in this call of hey, here's the things that you really should be doing if you want to see success, or you just it's more a tailored approach than that? We'll just be curious on that question from your perspective of if you could do nothing else and you publish this book, what would you, Marissa, be doing to get that book out there to people? Yeah,
I would be consistent through one particular channel with how you continue to share your voice beyond the pages of your book. So yeah, I honestly, it wouldn't be publicity that I would say, and that's where we make our money over here, for the most part. I wouldn't say that because publicity is so much based upon, the success of that is so much based upon what people are going to find on the other side beyond the awareness that's built through the media. And so I say channel because I don't just talk about social media. I don't just talk about a blog. I don't just talk about a newsletter. Again, it's finding that one marketing channel that feels the most authentic to you, to your messaging, what you think your target audience will really connect with, and focusing and being consistent there. If someone is going to buy a book today, in a lot of my experience, they want to build trust and a relationship with that person first. And what they're going to do is they're going to Google you. And so make sure they find one place where you're continuing to share your knowledge, you're continuing to be active within the space that you're talking about in your book, that they can build that trust through following you through whatever channel that is over time. And then they say, you know what, now I want to actually invest my money in this person. I'm going to go buy the book here. So it's identifying that one channel and being consistent with what you're sharing through that channel. It doesn't have to be, if you pick LinkedIn, it doesn't have to be posting 16 times a week. It could be 3 times a week, but do the same days and be consistent with that. And that's number one. I think covers a lot of different bases of what you can do that feels right for you.
Yeah. Wow, guys, so good. Already a couple great questions in the chat. Liz, that's a great question for Marissa in regard to Smith Publicity and y'all's specific services, which I feel like could be probably the next hour. Marissa, you talking about the different service. I wonder if there's maybe just like an email connection between you two after.
Yeah, that would be great.
Liz is.
Absolutely.
Not to totally, ignore that question, but it's good. Like Marissa, y'all do so much with Smith. Kate, maybe your question's great. I don't know. Do you want to take off mute and maybe kind of ask Marissa as you think about your own book launch and leading up to your own book? Let's see here.
Yep, sorry about that. So, Marissa, nice to meet you.
Great to meet you.
I'm hoping to be launching a book by mid-December to early January is the goal.
Okay.
And, some people hype it like so long out that I think that it's boring and you've turned them off by the time it actually is launched.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering, because you do it all the time, right? And I don't. What would be, to you, what's an ideal time frame? And I know it depends on what your topic is. So in my case, I'm looking at women in business, and I'm looking to pivot less from training and over to keynoting. So it's going to be a book thanks to Streamline. It's actually turning out better than I'd hoped. So it's going to be a really good book with really good, juicy stories. I've got some PR friends that are going to set me up on a book tour, but I wanted to know from you, what's too much publicity? Like where do you draw the line? Some people are like, I'm on social media every 5 minutes. That's not me.
Sure. So, Kate, I'd love to, if there's flexibility to your timeline, I'd like to make a suggestion. Maybe this would apply for everybody across the board, but December is a very hard time to launch a book. Unless there's a big jolly red guy on the cover, it's going to be hard to grab the attention of individuals launching in the month of December. When we look to January, then too, I always say, hey, if you're going to do January, maybe look toward the 3rd or 4th week of the month, just because that is going to help avoid the attention that's still around the holidays, and you can come back and have at least a couple weeks to get for that buzz going and get people engaged with you. That last month before your book comes out is the most powerful window of time you have. Typically, when we talk about building out a campaign, we usually don't begin, sometimes with publicity, we'll begin that, 3 to 4 months in advance of publication date. And that just has to do with media lead times and time to get the book, review it, read through it, all of that. So we'll start a little further out on some of that from a publicity standpoint. But when we're guiding authors through a book launch, marketing timeline, and the points of engagement with your network, it really zeroes in on the final 3 months before the book comes out, but mostly the last 2 months, because kind of the industry knowledge is that most people are willing to wait maybe 2 months if they pre-order a book and to actually get it. Unless it's like a super duper well-known name, that last month to 2 months is when people are willing to wait if they're gonna pre-order the book. So I would really put a lot of your energy, a lot of your emphasis, a lot of your focus on and how you're talking about it through any particular channel, even if it's just emails to your network, to your family and friends. Focus in on that last month. Start to talk about how people can support you through Amazon reviews in particular. That's going to be really important. Really encourage them to drive those Amazon reviews. During the first couple of weeks the book comes out. This is going to help with the algorithms for Amazon overall. And just I think it's important to make sure you keep that connection going even after the book comes out too. That month after is still super powerful. Think about if you want to have any kind of virtual launch party or anything like that, have that maybe either the week it comes out, the week after. It's another great kind of moment to keep that energy going. And the kind of last little nugget I'll leave with you in particular, Kate, is if you're writing a book that has to do with women in business and leadership, there is no better time from a media perspective than to launch during Women's Month in March. So maybe just consider that if you're willing to wait a little bit longer.
That's really helpful. Thank you, actually, because I was thinking January because December's so hectic, and then said, if it's ready, maybe in time for Christmas, that would be good. But I think you're probably right. So I'll take your advice, and thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And we're always thinking about, from the publicity perspective in particular, when media are going to be paying closer attention to a certain topic. So if you have a memoir about your experience with breast cancer, think about October as your launch timing. It's just going to give you, and it's not just in the media, everybody's going to just have that as an elevated point of thought at that particular time. If you're talking about as a book that has some education, maybe September, October, kind of right in that back to school window there is a great time. I highly recommend not launching an education related book in the summer.
No, that's so good. Yeah. To think about your content as it relates to when you might launch your book, in addition to just yearly, almost like hitting that kind of like, it's like a slingshot, every year you can count on kind of this time period as just kind of to re-promote, partner alongside organizations that might, get the word out there in regard to your content is so cool. Maybe
to your question really quick earlier about kind of how do you keep the kindling going, the flame going over time. And I think that's a beautiful example of the anniversary date and coming back around. And that's a point to consider, like an ebook release or an audiobook release or an ebook promo that you do, at different points along the way. You can always keep going with your thought leadership. That should be the consistent, that's what's going to keep everything alive for the long term, is keeping your voice out there. But those are, again, doing a Goodreads giveaway. Those are some really great little nuggets to add in along the way to just keep that energy going back to the book again, even months after it's come out.
Cool. Maybe one more question before kind of heading to the next section for the coaching portion of our call. You could either raise your hand, or if you just want to unmute. I might just do one more. And if not, that is okay too. Because we know there's a lot of information, but it's great information. Again, the fact that we're recording this call, whether it's, hey, what's that one thing Marissa said? Yeah, we want you guys to be able to have this in reference. But I think in sticking somewhat with this agenda, Alex, I know this is maybe a little bit more your wheelhouse as well, just as we get into, again, coaching on kind of two topics. And if this is your first monthly group coaching call, know that we've been going over the last few months, kind of 2 by 2 specific topics as it relates to kind of an author launch checklist that we provide with each Streamline author towards the end of their book launch. In their author launch checklist, we have about 24 or so different categories. And so we've been looking at 2 of them on each of these calls. And so for this month, and we sent out an agenda this morning highlighting local TV and radio and pursuing podcasts. And yeah, Alex, I don't know, maybe you have a word, because obviously I've seen you do this really well. Local TV and radio, you think, oh man, do people still watch the local, TV, stations? And it's like, the answer is yes. And so Alex, maybe speak to that one first, and then we can talk about podcasts shortly thereafter and Marissa's thoughts on both.
Yeah, and my sister-in-law is the local TV anchor, Will. So don't let her hear you question if people watch the news anymore. I won't tell her you said that. But yeah, I think So two things as I'm hearing Marissa say this, I just wanted to mention this as well. I think as authors and as speakers and as influencers, like people, if you're on this call, you're those things, right? You have a platform. I think there's this beginning when you first start, and maybe you've been doing it for a while. There's almost like this, maybe call it imposter syndrome, but just like this, you feel like you're putting your stuff out there and you're like, am I like wrong to be doing this? Like, it's almost like I had to kind of get over that at the beginning. And so I would just say one thing that I've seen in my business, and maybe Marissa, you've seen this too with PR and marketing that you do, is like the more that I share on social media or podcasts or whatever, like the more opportunities that I get. Right. And so it's like a weird feeling because at first I'm like, okay, I don't want to be self-promotional, but like, I know we've talked about this before on one of the calls we did. It's like, if you have a message to share that can help people, who are you not to share it? And so I think that's why, PR and marketing is so important. And so two things that I think Will, did you email them over or are you going to screen share? I couldn't remember what you said. Did you already send the podcast and the news stuff?
For the PDF, I'll share at the end. But...
Okay. Yeah. Just to kind of hit on where we're going with it is, getting on one thing just to hit on podcast really quick is that when you think about a, radio ad, or you think about it like a podcast, literally by being a guest on someone's podcast, you are literally, it's there forever. Right. And like from an SEO standpoint, like you talk to all the author friends that I have, like when it comes to their book launch, they try to get on, 10, 20, 30 podcasts, as many as they can. John Gordon did hundreds for some of his books, where it's like you're doing it for free, but you schedule out all these podcasts around your book so that when people now are Googling your name, right? Now the SEO, it's all backlinking to your website. When people go and ask, I've had so many times earlier in my career when I didn't have like a speaker highlight video yet, I would have people say, hey, can you send me, your info? I want to hear what, if we're going to book you to speak, we want to know how you speak, right? And so I could just send them a link to a podcast that I was on. And I'm like, look, I don't have a video yet, but based on this, like, this is the type of thing I'm going to be bringing to your audience, And so I think number one, for whether you guys have a podcast on here or not, I really think that you should really try to double down on that. And so that's what we'll get into in a little bit. And then, even, TV and radio, that was the second thing that we'll put on there. It's like, literally last week, I wouldn't even plan to say this, but I had a buddy of mine has a radio station. He said, hey, I had a guest lined up. He backed out. Can you be on here tomorrow? And I was like, sure. I already had a speaking engagement that morning and that night, but I said, I'll do it. And yeah, like it led to a few leads that I've connected with this week from that thing last week. In the past, getting on TV or radio, I've literally myself, not anyone else doing this for me, I've just like reached out to a host or someone that I knew on the news and said, hey, I'm coming out with a new book, or I just launched a book. Would you be willing to have me on for just a few minutes? I'll give you a signed copy of my book. Right. And every time I've done that ask, like, they're like, sure. And yeah, it's a 2-minute segment and it's, hey, Alex, tell us about you, but it's like, that's for social media, the type of thing that helps with that. And so, yeah, Marissa, I don't know, would you say there's any elements of like, from your perspective of like the PR, like getting over I shouldn't be sharing this much, because I feel like we all maybe feel in different ways, but what would be like a good way to like, I don't know, ease our thoughts when it comes to like, you do have to kind of put out good stuff for people to want more of it, You
absolutely do. But I think too, what's most wonderful about local opportunities, or even maybe podcasts that aren't Joe Rogan yet, or are, some of those more really focused and smaller, so that they give you that opportunity to, for lack of a better word, practice. And so while you might feel really nervous about getting out there and you have that imposter syndrome of, am I going to do a good job? Am I going to share the right things with them? I think that a lot of these outlets, they're just welcoming and so appreciative of the opportunity to share more content and share more voices. And it's giving you the chance to refine your messaging. And you'll probably go in there and do a fantastic job, but of course, we're all going to be our worst critic. And you're going to come back around and say, I could have done this better. I could have done that. And so you're refining along the way. What when we're pitching for TV opportunities, we always start with an author's local and regional market, as well as other local and regional markets around the country when it comes to TV in particular first, because we want them to get that experience, that on-camera exposure, and then to have those clips to be able to pitch to national. Because when that time comes, the first thing our producer is going to ask for, if they're interested, is, can you send me a clip of them on camera already? And that can be sometimes even a video podcast opportunity or a speaking engagement too. But those, what might be considered some of the smaller opportunities sometimes are going to be really great for getting that practice, that experience in, and also they're really important for connecting with your target audience, especially with podcasts. When you're identifying a certain podcast as a listener that you want to tune into, you're usually going and you're searching for specific content. You're going to search for something you're really interested in learning about. And by doing that, you're creating this really condensed audience within the podcast space that is allowing you, when you're going in as the author for this interview, the expert, you're probably reaching a much more condensed audience when you have that interview than you will if you were in the Wall Street Journal, let's just say, because when someone opens the Wall Street Journal, they don't know what they're going to get that day. But if they go to that podcast, they know the type of content that's going to be delivered there, and it's going to be something they're looking out for. So those big flashy names aren't always as impactful as the really targeted and smaller market opportunities can be in reaching your target audience. So it's something that all of our campaigns at Smith are rooted in building a diverse media portfolio, and local and regional and more target audience podcasts and all of that are just as important as it is if we're going to go after the Today Show or Wall Street Journal or Forbes or whatever it might be, because you also never know who's listening or watching. As Alex said, he got leads from this local radio interview. I think one of our greatest examples was a past author of ours had a piece in the Orange County Register newspaper in California, and great paper, pretty decent circulation there, but very regionally focused. There was a producer from 2020 who was visiting her parents in Orange County, who her parents had the newspaper on the table, and she decided to pick it up and start taking a look at it, came upon the story, said, wow, this is really impactful, reached out, coordinated an interview, and that 2020 interview actually snowballed over into a People magazine feature as well. She had a nonprofit that was behind her book that was really, really powerful. And so you just see that snowball effect of regional media that can move into bigger opportunities. You really don't need, as Alex just proved, you don't need a publicist to do that early regional kind of local outreach. I encourage a lot of times to either, someone, you might reach out to them through social media. A lot of news anchors and reporters are active on certain social media platforms, so you can reach out to them directly in that way. And then also sometimes just the general info, especially for TV, the general info desk email address, it is reviewed regularly by producers. They're looking for content there. So don't be afraid to send over a quick note. They love to feature local authors. They love to celebrate them, especially if you have some kind of event or other thing they can come out and get that great B-roll, imagery related to what you're talking about. It just elevates it even further. When it comes to podcasts, too, there's a really great platform called Listen Notes. That's LISTEN and then Notes, NOTES. It's free to use. There is a version you can pay to upgrade in it. Same with another platform called Rephonic, REPHONIC. Free version that you can upgrade into a premium version as well, that can give you rankings, and you can search for certain terms that are related to your content that you kind of want to target. There's a lot of I think with most of them, to actually access the context, you have to upgrade, but Listen Notes comes at a very reasonable cost to have access to some of that content. Those are some platforms that we use internally here at Smith for our podcast research and such. And just again, keep in mind, like, don't just limit yourself to the top 0.0001% of podcasts that are out there. There's so many that are, even if their numbers are 1,000 downloads per episode, it's still really impactful. That could be a really great audience that you can be reaching. So especially in the early days, if you don't have a vast media portfolio, I think a lot of people can, say, gosh, my time already feels limited. I don't want to spend it with smaller market opportunities, but they're really powerful and can really help you build your audience. That applies across the board, even beyond we're talking about with podcasts and local media here. Trade publications, audience-specific media, writing articles in those places. They're what we've seen result in even more speaking requests, coaching requests, consulting opportunities than major media has for a lot of our authors.
Yes. So much good here. And Kat, I know you mentioned if we could put those links in the chat, which we totally can. Marissa just did. And Dallin, man, sitting patiently waiting with your hand raised. So dude, thank you so much. Totally, if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question for Marissa.
Yeah, I started typing this question, and as it started to form a wall, I thought, okay, maybe this just needs said instead. So I may have missed something here because I had a brief interruption and had to run for a second, but I didn't see anything about it in the chat. I would love to hear if you had any thoughts on the difference between promoting fiction versus nonfiction or self-help type. So I write because I want to speak, and it's a vehicle for authority and a platform and all of that. But the book is the secondary thing. But my wife is an author, right? She doesn't want to speak. She doesn't want to do any of the other things. She just wants to write the book, and she writes fiction. Just did her debut, published her debut 2 weeks ago. And yeah, so exciting. I'm obviously a huge fan and very biased and think it's amazing, but I'm me, so of course I will. But it's been really interesting because I learned a lot of lessons from writing my first book and making a ton of mistakes and really honestly flopping the book launch hard and just realizing, wow, I have no clue what I'm doing. We managed to avoid a lot of those mistakes with hers, but it's, she can get on social media and just make a TikTok account and start talking to the book talk people and sell some and get some interest at least. But there's also, it's like finding a podcast that is not just inundated with requests to talk about their books. Like I could find endless podcasts to talk about a nonfiction business leadership type book. And I should have done more, but super easy. Finding a podcast for a fiction book is way harder. And at least in my brief experience. So I was just wondering what some of your thoughts were when it came to, wow, there are really different types of books out there, and some things work for one and some don't for another. And if you had any general advice for someone who is trying to promote both within his own family. And
Marissa, also, I would love to hear a thought or two for Dom, because it's a great question, but also time check. Just in respecting everyone, maybe another minute or two, and then I'll wind it down a minute or so after 45. So,
yeah, that sounds perfect. Don, I think what is always the common denominator is author platform. So it's that as an author, you should be out there in some kind of way, sharing your voice, sharing, I think in your wife's case, it's sharing inspiration as a writer, talking about character development, talking about settings of where she's writing about and everything, versus you're going on the other side, sharing more of the thought leadership piece of it. What we do work with fiction as well here at Smith, and we have a specialized team that focuses on fiction. And there are different strategies that we implement. We don't do as much podcast outreach when it comes to fiction. What we do a lot of outreach to are bookstagrammers and book talkers and bloggers. And, so there's different people that we're targeting in different media outlets for fiction. And so I love that you brought up the TikTok space there. That's definitely where I think the more that your wife can be connecting with the genre influencers in her space, the better, and really build that relationship, because again, those audiences are going to be more condensed and focused there. And then again, on the nonfiction side and within the space that you're writing, I think that sure, can you find a lot of different ones? I think you'll be surprised at, while they might be getting a lot of requests for people to talk about their book, how excited a lot of these podcast hosts and producers are to get individuals in for the content to be able to share. So while it might feel like you're going after kind of a fool's errand in any kind of way of reaching out to a lot of them, they need the content too. So it's a win-win for everybody in that situation. And so again, it is, the consistency is the author platform. It just looks a little bit different in who you're targeting on either side. But it sounds like your wife's definitely focusing on the right areas for fiction. And there's some other fun things you can do too with some book tour companies and things like that we partner with some of our fictional campaigns.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably about as comprehensive and wonderful as an answer as you could in a couple minutes. So thank you, Marissa. Yeah, guys. And so teaching, coaching, and then giving is kind of the end of the funnel on these calls. So just to show real quick, kind of an exercise that we have for you all. And this PDF, I'll be sending out in an email following this call with the recording of this call. And it's this little PDF we put together on Here Comes the Pitch. And so my dad is on this call, Bill Severns, and so I had to give a baseball nod. So we did Here Comes the Pitch, just in you taking the time in the days ahead to list out 10 podcasts, 10 news outlets that are local. And then just this little exercise here of write an example of an email, 1 or 2 line that you might reach out to the host of a podcast, or reach out to a local TV producer, and really just to get at the fact that, hey, this is a numbers game. You know, this is saying, man, if you take the time to identify, just like Marissa was saying, not necessarily the top 1% of podcasts, but people who are local or jive with your content. And if you send out 10 emails to those kinds of people and get 1 response, you know, was it worth it? And hopefully, yes, you know, it's like, man, one or 2 positive responses could be awesome. And so I know my dad raised his hand again there. I'd like to think that's a high five that we got the baseball reference in there, because yeah, guys, here comes the pitch. We want to see pitches from y'all. If y'all have an email you want to send us of like, hey, how does this sound? Because again, someone like Alex or Marissa, they've done it, they've lived it. And we can give you feedback or critique or before you send it out into the world. So Alex, Marissa, if you guys have any last words as we hop off our call here, we're so grateful for everyone joining.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, Marissa. Your contact info is in the chat. If you want to learn more about ways that you can partner with Smith, reach out to us. We'll get you connected. But ultimately, I think Marissa said it, like there's so many things you can be doing on your own before you're ready to take that next step. And so start building that foundation. We can help you with certain things, and then Marissa will be here to help as well. So thank you, Marissa, for spending your time.
No, thank you so much again for having me join in. Happy to have one-on-one conversations with anyone who would like to just chat further, learn more, and just really excited for all of you. And congrats on just taking wherever your step is in the book process so far. It takes guts to do that, and I don't take it lightly at all. So congrats to all of you.
That's a wonderful final word. Thank you, Marissa. Thank you, everyone. Hope you all have a great rest of your Thursday and rest of your week. Go Chiefs.
Man. Go Eagles.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.